from the PG Department of English of Sadakatullah Upper College. In this video, we are going to see one of the famous works of the early 20th century British literature.
It is none other than George Bernard Shaw's The Apple Cart. Let's begin with a short introduction about George Bernard Shaw. He is a prolific Irish critic and political activist born on July 26, 1856 in Dublin. He was awarded with Nobel Prize in Literature in 1925 and Oscar Award in 1938. His notable works are Widowers' Houses, Arms and a Man, The Devil's Disciple, Man and Superman, Pygmalion and Saint John. The Apple Cart is subtitled as a political extravaganza. It is a prime example of political satire published in 1929, reflecting the tension between the British monarchy and the rising power of democratic institutions. Hence, the title, The Apple Cart, symbolizes the instability of the political system. In addition to that, Apple Cart also represents the individual's desire for autonomy and self-determination, which is the central theme in the play. Through the character of King Magnus, Shaw satirizes the notion of absolute power and the limitations of the monarch's role. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Proteus, represents the corrupting influence of power and dangers of unchecked ambition. The characters are King Magnus, Orinthia, his mistress, Alice, Princess Royal, Joe Proteus, the Prime Minister, Jemima, the Queen, Sempronius, the King's private secretary, Pamphilus, the King's private secretary, Billy Bonages, President of the Board of Trade, Pliny, Chancellor of the Exchequer, Nicobar, the Foreign Secretary, Crassus, Colonial Secretary, and Balbus, the Home Secretary. There are other characters like Amanda Polsworth and Lystrita and Van Hatten, who are the American Ambassador, Power Mistress, and Power Mistress General. So Shaw has crucially characterized King Magnus as a wise and tactful leader who is experienced in politics with strong insight and foresight. He believes in the importance of the loyal veto and is skilled in diplomacy and manipulation. Magnus is devoted to his queen and nation and emerges victorious in the crisis due to his clever tactics. Whereas Prime Minister Proteus, on the other hand, is a foolish and aggressive personality who is overly ambitious for power. He is subdued by the corruptive attitudes of ministers and often threatens resignation while trying to restrict the king's power. Proteus is proved to be a democratic humbug and is easily defeated by the king's tactics, ultimately surrendering himself and tearing out the ultimatum. The play structure is divided into two acts. Now we are going to see Act 1, which introduces the king's secretaries and sets the stage for the story. This is followed by a lengthy conversation between King Magnus of England and the Labour leader Bonages. The first half reaches its climax with a tumultuous cabinet meeting where the Prime Minister delivers an ultimatum to the king: relinquish all power, including veto rights, or face mass cabinet resignations. The ultimatum contains three conditions. The king should not make any speeches. The king should not talk about the veto power anymore. The king should not give any articles to the newspaper, or he should not run the paper from behind the palace. These are the three ultimatum. At the play's core is an extended dialogue between the king and his ambitious mistress Orinthia, who embodies everything a ruler should avoid despite her allure. The second half mirrors the first, introducing Queen Jemima and exploring the United States' potential reunion with the Commonwealth, which is a remarkably a precedent predication. The play's second half culminates in another stormy cabinet meeting where the king responds to the ultimatum with one of his own. He declares his intention to abdicate form a political party and participate in the election to become prime minister. The king's ultimatum is so forceful that the cabinet, particularly the Prime Minister Proteus, withdraws his original ultimatum. Ultimately, the play concludes with a definitive resolution, except for the resolution of the political crisis between the king and the cabinet. The play ends with King's declaration of Robert as a political monarch, and he reveals that he intends to remain active in Parliament. This is the end of the play.
Thank you for watching. See you in another literary piece.